Hello, everyone. So today I would like to share some thoughts about, and not only thoughts, but also the sort of deeper understanding from the personal experience about spectrum of awareness. So the scope of awareness, how evolution happens, spiritual expansion, spiritual evolution, and the difference between the limited consciousness and the evolved consciousness. And also the way it applies to the process of self-realization and eventually liberation. So the difference is, when we speak about spiritual evolution, we speak about the scope of awareness of the person who we are speaking about. So let's say an average individual being on planet Earth has a certain scope of awareness, and this awareness is bound to this dimension. It's bound to all the notions within this dimension. So this consciousness is limited by its own karmic experience. Now, when we speak about evolution, we speak about not only awakening to the sort of ultimate reality, or whatever you call it, to the point where consciousness observe all the lower dimensions from above in a wholesome way. So the difference between the evolved being and the limited being is that the evolved being has a wider range of awareness, and in a way they observe the reality with all the different dimensions within, let's say, one realm. And so their awareness observes all the phenomena in a neutral way. At the same time, when the limited consciousness, the consciousness which is bound to one dimension or just several dimensions, cannot have that observation or perspective, because it's bound to the karmic experience, and this karmic experience is veiled or colored or bound to the existent notions which have been accumulated through the down cycle, let's say, or through the cycle of this consciousness diving into the matter. And the way it dives into the matter is through the fragmentation. So it starts seeing the reality and perceiving it in a more and more fragmented and dispersed way. And so it binds itself to different elements and fragments of this reality, rather than keeps this wholesome perspective. So when we start evolution, we start basically the restoration of that wholesomeness. And so we evolve by detaching our awareness from limited or different fragments or limited elements within the projected reality, and start restoring a more neutral perspective. Because at this point, in this day and age, everyone's awareness is scattered within the projected reality and bound to different fragments and notions of this projected reality. And so this way, it is also bound and limited to it and by it. And so when we want to evolve, we have to neutralize these notions of good and bad, or different kind of limited ideas of this reality, or about this reality, which are our ideologies, belief systems, certain way we understand and process reality. So all of that has to be neutralized. And through that neutralization, through that dissolution of judgments, of limited understandings, of the emotional residue that is connected to that, this imagination which is also linked to the emotions, we restore gradually, we restore the wholesome perception of reality. And this way we evolve. So the difference between the evolved being and the limited being is only in that an evolved being has a wider range of awareness, if you may say so, or wider scope of awareness, and has a more wholesome perspective. And the more we evolve, the more and more wholesome perspective we gain, so to speak. And so the other point is the other difference between the limited being and the evolved being is that the limited being is bound, as I said already, to the dimension. So everything, and this bondage, in fact, is related to the emotional residue, to the imaginative aspect of our consciousness, especially when we speak about this particular dimension, this reality that we are living in. So the evolved being is simply witnessing all the other dimensions, or let's say if they are evolved beyond this realm, that they can just witness. They may experience anything, but they don't bind themselves to the experience. So they have the liberated, you may say, way of experiencing. And liberated, a free way of experiencing, means you experience, but it doesn't leave any trace of that experience within you. So you're not attaching, and it's impossible as long as you are still unrefined and attached to one dimension, because that's why you're attached, because you have that residue. The moment you dissolve and neutralize that, you cannot simply be affected, because you have realized that it doesn't really matter what you experience. It's just one of the multitudes of many possibilities of within this realm, within this dimension, and within any other dimension. So your consciousness expands and evolves, and that's why you have a more and more detached perspective. Yet at the same time, you have a wider range. You're more flexible within the realm through these different dimensions. You may attend to this dimension, you may attend to this phenomena, but yet once you withdraw your consciousness no longer craves or recollects that experience, nor you are interested in bringing it up, because it's unimportant, because your priority is above that. Your awareness standpoint, the level of your awareness is beyond the dimension, all the phenomena that you are currently experiencing. That's why you're simply detached. You're not detached because someone tells you to be this way, but because you've evolved, you've matured to the point of seeing each and every phenomena in a neutral way, because you've received, or you've awakened to a higher perspective. You've expanded through your consciousness, your awareness to that point where you observe everything above. And this is possible only when certain karmic residue is dissolved. Otherwise, that karmic residue will keep you bound through your imagination, through your memories, through invoking of your emotions. And as long as that is happening, you cannot understand the way evolved beings perceive this reality, or what the liberated state in general is. And it is impossible to prove it, because one has to be established in that. Otherwise, it's all just a talk. Because that your awareness has to expand, and once it expands, you start emanating differently. Your radiation is different, because you have also connection to the higher levels of awareness, which is a different source of energy. Your energy now is not scattered within the projected reality, or not bound to it, and thus you emanate a different level of energy. So another sign is that your awareness is emanating different level of energy, or It just is a different radiation, the spiritual radiation. But whichever way we are trying to explain the higher or evolved or liberated phenomena through the notions of a bound consciousness, we're still going to fail. And that's why direct experience is the only way. It's when someone shares this information, it's not about you needing to bind yourself to this information. The point is to expand your awareness so that you may have that direct experience. It doesn't matter who shares that experience, because it's not about the vessel, it's not about the information. It's about the emanation that is invisible, that is beyond this dimension. Otherwise, there is no way for anyone to really evolve and expand. The other point is that one of the highest blessings on this planet and in this dimension or this realm is to have direct experience beyond words and beyond the earthly notions or the limited notions of humans, meaning the direct experience of spirituality that does not have any tag, cannot be boxed or bound to anything, because it's not about that. True spirituality is never about bondage or trying to recruit anyone to follow anyone or anything. It's about turning your focus within towards the essence, so that you pursue the essence. Once you pursue the essence, you start expanding through that essence. And so you observe any phenomena in the projected reality through the essence, meaning through the wholesomeness. That's why you can no longer be deluded, and you start your personal process of disillusionment or refinement or transformation, whichever way you call it. So this is another point. And the next point is that the evolved being is more flexible, because, as I said, they have wider spectrum of awareness. They may experience this and that, and yet they're not bound to anything. A bound person, or a limited, or a person in bondage, if you will, is rigid, because they are, deeply connected to the projected reality, to its elements, and even bound to it. That's why there is rigidity, fear, inability to just observe the reality in a flexible way as the evolved beings observe. They allow the flow to bring whatever phenomenon, and yet they observe, experience, and let go of anything, whichever phenomenon. And that's the difference. A rigid person who is bound to one dimension constantly looks for something new to entertain them, to give them a meaning, to give them a hope, and to bind them. Somehow they feel safer in the bondage. That's why such beings do not look for spiritual liberation. They look for such forms of spirituality that will bind them or box them and make them feel comfortable and safe, because they can only feel comfortable and safe in a rigid way through controlled paradigms, where they kind of feel safe while being in control in a limited way. True spirituality is about a leap of faith and surrender, which is impossible to imagine for the limited beings, because they constantly keep on gliding along the surface, attaching themselves to one element or the other. And they can only let go of the previous element or the other thing by attaching to a new one. And this is the way the rigid and limited consciousness operates. How many consciousnesses are there that are ready to take a leap of faith and surrender and just accept the flow? We don't even understand practically what that would mean, to accept the flow, to surrender to the flow, to experience this life in an unbound way, because it would mean that we neither believe nor disbelieve in anything. We accept, we flow, and we let go. We grow every moment. We accept life as every moment. We step in one moment, we step out of it into a new moment without dragging the chain of previous experiences of our past. But so far, most of the people live through the past because they're bound to that past. Their past is their present. And they are bound to the notions of the past. That's why they constantly view or witness this reality through the veil of their past. And they are not ready to part with these past ideas, past ideologies, because they're possessed. A part of their consciousness is possessed by these ideologies, belief systems, or beliefs in general, social patterns, behavioral patterns, family, ancestral patterns, and so on and so forth. An evolved being does not deny anything. They understand that everything has its own niche, and yet they do not attach themselves to any particular niche. They just keep it all in a perspective. If they need, they access certain information, like as if you would have a library and you would need to access certain information, you would just take a book from your shelf, read it, and put it back in there without attaching to that information, just using that information as appropriate for this particular moment of reality. The moment this moment is no longer valid, you let it go and move on. And so, of course, you can still choose to entertain certain paradigms within your reality aspect, but an evolved being entertains them willingly without attachment. They choose what they want to stay in their reality, or what they want to keep in their reality, and what they no longer need. A person in bondage cannot have such a privilege, because the bondage is in the way through the gross emotional reality, because certain emotions and memories arise, and they are in control of these people. These ideologies are in control because they manipulate these people in bondage through fear paradigms, through different kinds of, fear. It's basically all about fear, because the people in bondage are afraid to let go of certain, maybe even outdated ideas and beliefs, because they are indoctrinated by these ideas. And so they would rather hold on to them and stay safe rather than they expand their awareness and be liberated. And again, even those people who feel that they expanded somewhat through some kind of supernatural experiences, or let's say through dreams or becoming a little bit more aware of certain spiritual phenomena, still they're in bondage of certain ideas of someone else. They need to follow someone or something. They cannot question and be autonomous in their perception of reality, because they haven't reconnected with that higher ultimate reality. They haven't reconnected with that higher standpoint or point of awareness where they could see everything in a neutral and wholesome way. And by reconnecting, they awaken. But still, if they are not aware of the process of awakening and self-refinement, their consciousness, which is still in bondage, which has these karmic connections or ties, will keep on dragging their attention to their unwholesome self, to their limitations, so that these limitations are dissolved. But many people have no desire to dissolve them, and so they try to bring and mix that experience of, or a glimpse of awareness, of higher awareness, again with their unhealed, unrefined self, traumatic self, and create something out of that experience. because they want to be something or someone in this projected reality, which is again the way to be or to get in bondage. So that is why to really proceed on this path of liberation while being in this dimension is very difficult, because the resistance is very strong. And the resistance comes from within. Through the down cycle, we've created a lot of ties with the projected reality. Through the ideologies, belief systems, which we are possessed with. And so maybe we can refine ourselves on the emotional level. Maybe we can let go of certain limited ideas on a personal level. But now, when we look at the collective level, it becomes harder and harder, because it's a subtle level, and it's still the level of bondage. And if we do not have that in perspective, we will continue to entertain these subtle paradigms which reinforce our bondage, even when we try to untie and evolve further. And this knowledge is practically useless for the majority of people, because they're still unhealed and on the level of resolving and refining themselves on the gross emotional level. But even those who have refined that level and neutralized that, dissolved that karmic level, they still have to work on their attachments to different ideologies and belief systems, different subtle ways they get attached, for example, through righteousness, through holding on to a certain spiritual paradigm. Because in order to dissolve and liberate oneself, one has to accept that these paradigms are there, that this is valid for some, let's say, some people or some part of the collective or within the collective. But if you are to unbind yourself, you have to hold on to something that is wholesome. But you, again, do not deny. You don't live in denial or in defense, or you're not establishing yourself on any particular position, or you are not on any, you don't stand on any point. You accept that there is this and there is that, but you remain neutral, because you understand that everything is valid for a certain aspect of consciousness or scope of consciousness or degree of awareness, and it is valid and natural for that, but it doesn't need to be your reality. So you allow, you live through this surrender and allowance, and so you are not denying the flow of reality with whatever it brings on whichever level, and yet you're observing it all from a higher standpoint, from a wholesome standpoint. That's why you are free from judgment. You just name things their names, but staying neutral within. And that is the difference between the evolved consciousness and the consciousness that is in bondage, that is seeing everything in a limited way or scope. And the evolved consciousness sees everything from above or in a wider range. And the more you evolve, the more wholesome perspective you have. And no one is there to, there's no one there to measure it. And when you're truly evolved, at least to a certain degree, you no longer depend on the projected reality. You no longer need anyone's validation for your perception. You become very, very autonomous. You can never become independent, because we're a part of the collective and the universal. We're part of creation. That's where humility comes from. But you have that wider awareness, and it never stops. This expansion never stops. It's ongoing. That's why the more you see and realize, the more you stop kind of directly connecting with limited aspects of reality, because you just now see the reality from a different standpoint, and it's neither good or bad. It is what it is. And that's you gain the simplicity of perception. So again, the more limited you are, the more your experience is tarnished or colored with emotions. The more you try to defend certain aspects of reality, or define the other, or deny, sorry, the other, or take a stand, or try to, go into some extremities. The more evolved you are, the more neutral, equanimous, and wholesome your perspective is. And so that's all about it. Thank you. If you like it, please share and subscribe. I appreciate your comments, and we'll address them in the upcoming videos. Thank you very much.